Well, hello there, 49er fans. It is JD with Hog Hater TV. Figured I'd pop on here with a long overdue video. A lot of you guys have been asking me my thoughts on this whole Antonio Brown situation, bringing Antonio Brown in to the red and gold, into the fold of the San Francisco 49ers. And now that it's official that Antonio Brown is requesting a trade from the Pittsburgh Steelers, I figured now is an appropriate time for me to give you guys my thoughts on the entire situation, whether or not I think we should bring him in, whether or not I think we can bring him in, and ultimately whether or not we will bring him in. I'm going to break it down the best I can with some evidence and some examples that will leave you guys thinking that the Niners are going to come away with Antonio Brown, because that's what I truly believe. I believe at the end of the day, either when the league year starts or just prior to it, that the San Francisco 49ers will land Antonio Brown and will help upgrade this offense with one of the most dynamic receivers in the NFL. But first, hey, you guys check the jacket? You guys check the old retro jacket? Look at the old logo. Look at the old vintage logo, and you know it has to be the OG starter jacket and the OG logo Niner hat. Feeling a little nostalgic today. I don't know what it is, but without further ado, if you haven't already, I suggest you get your popcorn, because this is going to be a good one. Now, I'm going to get into the evidence first that suggests that Antonio Brown will wind up being a San Francisco 49er. Everybody knows where it started. New Year's Eve, George Kittle just gets on Twitter and shoots Antonio Brown a little text message that broke Twitter, broke the internet, threw everybody into a frenzy, and that's what started this entire thing. We know now that that original tweet from George Kittle to Antonio Brown was sparked by a dare from 49ers quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo, who dared George Kittle to do it. And this is all on the heels of Antonio Brown not showing up to the Steeler game, or not playing in the Steeler game Week 17, and ultimately, hearing grumblings that he wanted out. From there, we all know where it went. Antonio Brown, tweeted back to George Kittle. That started a firestorm. You had several 49er players reaching out to Antonio Brown on Twitter, whether that be Marquise Goodwin, Joe Staley, George Kittle, like I said. Jimmy Garoppolo has now been tied into it, amongst other players that I can't even remember off the top of my head. And if you look at it, the guys that were tweeting Antonio Brown, George Kittle, Joe Staley, Marquise Goodwin, I mean, even Richard Sherman's been linked into this whole thing. Jimmy Garoppolo, like I said, started it by daring George Kittle. Prominent guys in the 49ers locker room pretty much underhandedly, petitioning to bring in Antonio Brown. No tampering, just little subliminal little hints on social media. We all know about that part of it. And then you hear about Antonio Brown talks to Jerry Rice, the GOAT. He talks to Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice goes on local Bay Area radio and says, hey, I talked to him. He wants to come here. What more evidence do you need from there, right? The GOAT talked to him. The GOAT knows and heard it from the horse's mouth that Antonio Brown wants to come here. He wants to train with Jerry Rice. And as if that was not enough, Antonio Brown goes on Instagram, posts a picture of him talking to Jerry Rice while wearing a 49er jersey. Do we really need any more evidence than that? But it gets better, guys. I'm just giving you guys the obvious stuff, the stuff that everybody's seen. I mean, it's cut and dry. It's pretty clear that Antonio Brown wants to be a 49er, but there's more to it. You see, then you see a report that Terrell Owens talked to Antonio Brown, and Terrell Owens said that Antonio was asking him about the Bay Area, what it's like out here, what it's like to play for the 49ers, being out here in the Bay Area and whatnot. T.O. has come out and said that he talked to Antonio Brown about it. And then recently you see Chad Johnson on First Take. They're talking to him. And they asked Chad, Antonio Brown's your good friend. Where do you want to see him go? What's his answer? what is the first team that comes out of his mouth? The San Francisco 49ers. And why is that? Because that's where his boy wants to go. Keep in mind, Chad Johnson's a guy that has trained with Antonio Brown every single offseason for the past 8-9 years. He knows the guy. And quite frankly, Antonio Brown can't come out and say, hey, I want to play with the San Francisco 49ers. He's still under contract. So what does he do? He talks to people. He talks to Jerry Rice. He talks to Terrell Owens. He talks to Chad Johnson. And they put out the message for him. Pretty smart if you ask me. I mean, it's pretty simple when you look at it there that Antonio Brown wants to be a San Francisco 49er. But oh wait, there's more. And then you see Ben Albright, respected NFL reporter. Follow him on Twitter. The guy is far more right than he's wrong when it comes to rumors and where players are going and that whole kind of thing. Very well connected guy, if for those of you that know who Ben Albright is. On January 1st, which is literally the day after George Kittle tweeted Antonio Brown for the first time, Ben Albright was asked by a follower who tweeted him and said, what's a good fit for Antonio Brown? Where do you think Antonio Brown's going to go? Ben Albright automatically says, Niners are a good fit. Then about almost nearly 3 weeks go by. January 17th. What do you see? Ben Albright retweets that original tweet where he said that the Niners would be a good fit. Why? Because between January 1st and January 17th, you saw all the rumors, all the speculation fly that Antonio Brown wants to be a 49er. Then below that retweet, a follower says to Ben Albright, you know, man, you usually don't retweet these things unless you're right about something. What does Ben Albright reply with? He says, yeah, have a little patience, but yeah. And he puts a little winky face. And just for you guys that didn't see it, I'll put the link to Ben Albright's tweet below. Pretty telling, if you ask me, especially because I trust Ben Albright, and I feel like he's really well connected. And for those of you that have followed him for any amount of time, you know that he's in on a lot of these rumors before a lot of the other big name guys are. Ben Albright's a guy that I respect in the industry, and honestly, what he says, you know, I take it, man. I believe in it. And then boom, the bomb drops today. Antonio Brown officially requests the trade from the Pittsburgh Steelers, drops the video on social media thanking the Steeler fans, but it's laced with a track. It's laced with some music over some Antonio Brown Steelers highlights. What's the music? Do What I Want by Lil Uzi Vert. Now, some of you are thinking, man, that's just a song. It's just Lil Uzi. What does this have to do with Antonio Brown wanting to be a San Francisco 49er? Well, let me break it down for you. And it's already well known that Antonio Brown wants to come to San Francisco. Am I right? So why would he post a video with the song saying, I'm going to do what I want? It's pretty simple if you ask me. Antonio Brown wants to be a San Francisco 49er. That's it. That's all. So how is Antonio Brown going to arrange that? Because now we're getting into the whole crowd of people that say, oh, the Pittsburgh Steelers control where Antonio Brown goes. Antonio Brown has no say. He's going to go wherever the Pittsburgh Steelers tell him to go. Wrong. A lot of people think that NFL players don't have any power in roster moves, but they couldn't be more wrong. And for those of you that think the Steelers have all the power, they hold all the cards, they're going to ultimately determine where Antonio Brown goes, let me give you two prime examples that are 49er related that might sway your opinion a little bit. You see, you can even go back as recently as NaVorro Bowman. When NaVorro Bowman left the 49ers, he was released. But that was not until after the 49ers had agreed to trade Bowman to the New Orleans Saints. Bowman said he wouldn't report if the 49ers traded him there. He didn't want to go to New Orleans. So what happened? The trade went off the table. Then the 49ers did the right thing and released NaVorro Bowman, and he ended up in Oakland. We know that story. But that just shows you right there. If a player doesn't want to report, he's not going to. What team in their right mind is going to trade for a player who's not going to show up? But that's not the only example that I have. You see, because then you can go all the way back to 2003 when the San Francisco 49ers traded Terrell Owens. Sad day for me. One of my favorite players, actually my favorite player in 49er history, Terrell Owens. We all know they traded him to the Philadelphia Eagles. But that was not until after the Niners had agreed in principle to trade Terrell Owens to the Baltimore Ravens. But what happened? T.O. said he didn't want to go there. T.O. said he wouldn't report. So what did the Niners do? They're not gonna trade him there anyway, because the Ravens, they're gonna pull the offer. The Ravens aren't gonna trade for a guy who doesn't want to play there, who's not gonna show up. Again, what kind of business sense does that make? So that trade was nixed, and T.O. was traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. Why? Because that's where T.O. wanted to go. That's where T.O. planned to go ever since that Pro Bowl when he met up with Donovan McNabb that season before. Everybody knows that story. The players have more power than anybody thinks. So if you want to sit here and say that Antonio Brown holds no power, holds no weight with where he wants to go, you're wrong. Antonio Brown, if he wants to be a San Francisco 49er, he's going to be a San Francisco 49er as long as there is mutual interest on the behalf of this team. Now let me get into some examples as to why I think it would be beneficial for the 49ers to make the trade in the first place. The first place you want to look is in that locker room, because half the guys on the team pretty much have tweeted at Antonio Brown. They're trying to bring him into the fold. They know he'd help this team. They know he would bring help to a position of weakness on this roster at the wide receiver spot. And let's be real. You want to keep morale up in that locker room. You want to show those guys that you're serious about winning. They want to bring him in. The players want him on this team. So if you don't bring in Antonio Brown, what kind of a message does that send to your locker room? It shows them that you're not that serious about winning. I mean, Antonio Brown is one of the top 3 receivers in this game. Put him 1, 2, or 3, wherever you want to slot him, but he's up there. And he wants to be in a red and gold jersey, in a red and gold uniform. Why not bring him in? It makes absolutely zero sense not to, from that perspective. If you don't bring in Antonio Brown, you're going to rub guys in that locker room the wrong way. Especially guys like Jimmy Garoppolo, guys like George Kittle, guys like Joe Staley, guys like Marquise Goodwin. The pillars of this team, the foundation pieces of this team. So, if I'm the 49ers, I pull the trigger on that alone. But there's more. You see, because we're going into the 3rd year of the Lynch and Shanahan era. The first 2 years have been marred by injuries and bad play, bad quarterback play. And, you're in year 3 now. No more excuses. You have to start winning. You're not gonna wait 6 years and have 5, 6 losing seasons before you decide to get aggressive and upgrade this team. You have to make a move now. Because if you don't start winning this year, if you're Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, you're going to be on the hot seat in year 4. If you don't win in year 4, I think you're gone, in my opinion. So if I'm the 49ers, you have to look at this year as an all-out year, as a must-win season. You're going to have your quarterback back. Assuming he plays all 16 games, you should be a borderline playoff team. But you need to surround him with weapons so that the injuries don't happen anymore. Jimmy Garoppolo tore his ACL because nobody was open on the play. He took off and tried to make a play on his own. Ended up, blowing out his knee. That might not have happened if you had a guy like Antonio Brown out there creating separation and getting open, allowing Jimmy Garoppolo to get rid of the ball. You need to make a play for Antonio Brown. It affects the team in so many different ways. And in my opinion, I think it's a perfect storm. He wants to be here. The players want him here. The Niners have $60 million in cap space, so they can pay whatever kind of salary he wants. Niners, you need to make the trade. period. Because if you don't, you might be in trouble.